In today's episode, you will find out why you definitely shouldn't have an interview only podcast. And we will focus on why interview only shows look great just on the surface, though, but they can hurt your business. Next, what quote unquote having great conversations actually does for your podcast and what that actually means. And why solo episodes are key if you want to make money from your podcast. This is Say Yes to Podcasting, where solopreneurs learn how to start podcasts that attract their ideal clients and do the marketing for them. I'm your host, Anja Lordanic. Let's launch your show. I know I teased just about everything in the intro of this episode, but I just wanted you to know what you're in for today. And you're in for a treat, if I do say so myself. I hope that this episode will shift your perspective when it comes to interview only shows. And trust me, I completely get the appeal. I was one of those podcasters for whom an interview only show made the most sense. But my podcasting journey was a bit bumpy, and I will talk about that in some other episode. But long story short, when it comes to interviews, they seem like the path of least resistance. They seem the easiest. But I don't think that is why people resort to interview only shows. They resort to interview only shows because everyone seems to be doing it. And every show that does that kind of format only seems successful. But as I said, that's only on the surface. When you interview guests and when you promote those episodes on social media, you have social proof, you have credibility, you're a podcast host after all, you have interesting conversations, you inspire people to do stuff after they listen to those interviews. At least we like to think so. But on their own, when we look at them in isolation, they might actually be hurting your business. And let me explain why. Even though you might love the idea of having guests, and as I said, I did as well, when you're interviewing other people, especially in a way that people are doing that in general, let me explain. If your podcast is related to your business and you want to launch one and you decide to go with an interview only format, you're going to most probably launch a business podcast, a marketing podcast, a freelancing podcast, an entrepreneurship podcast, right? Am I on the right track? I know because I've been there too. And now we're getting to the breaking point. Because if you decide to publish episodes week after week with such a broad topic, that means that your guests will most probably be all over the place. Because marketing, it is such a huge umbrella. It has a lot of subtopics that you can explore. We all know that we should niche down. And this is what I'm trying to say. And I'm speaking with such conviction because I've been there. I had a podcast about freelancing, about freelance businesses, small business owners. And that is all fine and well, but that meant that I was open to any and all kinds of guests. Don't get me wrong, I don't regret a single episode. I did over 70 interviews or 80 for that show only, and I met such amazing people, amazing experts with whom I've established great relationships. And I still talk to a lot of them, even today. We exchange ideas, we refer each other. That is all great. But here I'm talking about your podcast being a part of your business. I wanted my podcast to be a part of my business. But the problem is, I made a mistake early on. We can look at it as a mistake or as a lesson. I'll let you be the judge of that. But I remember when I first launched my podcast, I thought to myself, I'm not sure what this will bring me, but I just know that I need to launch it now. So the good news is, I went out of my comfort zone and decided to launch something and make it public. And I essentially opened myself up to the world, which was a bit stressful. On the other hand, the bad news is when I said, I don't know what this will bring me, I essentially said to myself, I don't have a strict plan. I'm not sure where this will go. I'm not sure I'm targeting this kind of persona, maybe. Freelancers, yes, that makes sense. I'm a freelancer myself. I know what people want to know. I know plenty of people who want to grow their businesses, who want to get better, who want to listen in on these conversations. And yes, that is all valid. But how will I establish my expertise if 80 or 90% of my episodes are spent listening to the guests? And how can I expect to demonstrate my expertise if I didn't give myself a chance to do so? And it is my show. Let me say that once again because I believe it is important. How can you let your expertise shine if you didn't give yourself a chance to do so? I hope that by sharing this example of mine, I demonstrated how important it is to pick the right format. And at the very start of the episode, I said that you should aim to record solo episodes because they are key to business growth. They're key to establishing credibility and authority and trust with your leads and clients, who are first your listeners. Let me share another example I wrote about in my newsletter recently. Let's say you're a psychiatrist and you have a podcast all about healing trauma after life altering major accidents. And you're establishing your authority week after week with solo episodes, with your expertise, with your stories, with your examples. But then at some point, you do want to invite a guest expert, someone who will share a different perspective, someone who has different experiences compared to you. But what do you need to keep in mind? Who your listener actually is. So, what I shared in that newsletter is that you could invite a surgeon. Why a surgeon? Because they're the first point of contact for those people who went through major accidents. They understand those people, but on a different level compared to you. And this is why their perspective matters. Their patients are now your potential listeners or active listeners. And when you bring on a surgeon to talk about this topic of healing trauma after accidents, your listeners will benefit from that episode. They will happily listen to another expert on your show because what they're sharing pertains to them very specifically. On the other hand, if we have a general business podcast, one week we can have a graphic designer, another week we can have a financial expert, the following week we could have an email expert, and the following one, a website developer. We could argue that all of them could benefit your business. Yes, you can definitely learn a lot from each of those experts. But are those episodes specific to you? Are all of those episodes relevant for you in this moment? Probably not. But with the psychiatrist surgeon example, all of those episodes, whether they're solo or interview, are relevant to you as a listener who went through trauma after an accident. Those were some practical examples, some do's and don'ts. But to really drive this point home, let me explain why a solo show is better for monetizing your podcast. This is something I shared earlier, but I will reiterate. With a solo show, you control the content, you control the narrative, and you control the focus on your audience. Not only that, but with a solo show, you can create offers that are directly tied to the advice you're sharing on your show. And even though it might seem that guests bring on more versatility, they make your podcast more dynamic, but in reality, solo episodes are those that give you more freedom. And I want you to remember that. Speaking of targeted offers and freedom that a solo podcast gives you, if you're unsure about your podcast idea, an overarching theme of your show, or which guests actually make sense for your show, that is what I help solopreneurs figure out in my 60-minute podcast roadmap call. See what I did there? I couldn't do that if I had a guest on, right? So, in this 60-minute session, we polish your show idea and create a simple roadmap for your show. So, there is no second guessing anymore. There is no going too broad anymore. If this sounds like something you need, feel free to book a call. I will link it in the show notes and it will be the first link you see. Now, let's quickly recap what we talked about today. Interview only podcasts look good, but just on the surface. They can actually be hurting your business. Great conversations are not necessarily monetizable. What is monetizable are solo podcast episodes that allow you to showcase your own unique expertise and control the narrative 100%. We also talked about the need to be strategic when inviting guests to your show. Not every guest is a great fit for your show. And again, if you want more clarity on all of this, click the first link in the show notes and let's chat. Either way, thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next week.